Welcome back, nerds! The Captain America mantle has literally been thrown around over the past few years, and some truly unbelievable choices have been made when it comes to who dons the red, white, and blue. Like number 5, Venom. Earth 17,084's Steve Rogers was the one to bond with Venom, presumably from the get-go, and it actually goes really well. Steve Rogers is just so incorruptible that it rubs off on everyone around him, literally around him. When we are introduced to Captain Venom for the first time, he is on a multiverse hopping mission to find and recruit powerful Venom-bonded heroes to fight with the Resistance against the evil poisons hunting them down. You can catch Captain Venom at the end of most Edge of Venomverse comics because he is typically recruiting whichever variant was featured in it. What's extra cool about this is that Captain Venom is then drawn in a bunch of different art styles. To answer this question that I'm sure everyone has been wondering, yes, Captain America's shield is also covered in part of the sim. Unfortunately, despite the character's best efforts, they did not last very long. 4. Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones from Earth 55,228 is the exact same as the Jessica of 616 with one major difference, and judging by the topic of the video, you can probably guess what it is. She carried the shield. Captain Jones was featured in the 2022 variant series. Her early life was presumably very similar, if not the same, as her 616 counterpart, but their paths diverged after Jessica was free from the Purple Man. This version of Jessica Jones became Captain America and led the Avengers of her world, until Ultron dealt a devastating blow to the team by destroying their mansion, and we can assume many members of the team as well. She continued to fight for the greater good even though she was dealing with plenty of grief, but that's kind of the Captain America deal at this point. Jessica Jones is a great choice for the Captain America mantle, and thanks to the chemical incident, she's got her own special take on the character. Number 3, the Silver Surfer, but in the context of today's video, we will know him as Captain Cosmos, Guardian of the Universe. He and our next point come from a 2020 series called Tarot. Magical tarot cards featuring all of our favorite heroes are accidentally cut in half and then thrown around. And when these magical card pieces land, the cards that landed together make a new superhero. The top half of Surfer's card connected with the lower half caps, and boom, we have Captain Cosmos. It's pretty clear that the Silver Surfer is the more dominant half of the character based on the way he acts, and I have to say, he looks great. And the star on his chest is a cutout, which is so iconic. This version of Captain America has to be the most powerful variant out there, thanks to the Silver Surfer status as a Herald of Galactus and abilities granted and enhanced by the power cosmic. 2. The Hulk. So part of Cap's card landed with the Silver Surfer, and the other half with the Hulk, making Major Gamma protector of the people. You know Professor Hulk? Major Gamma kind of looks like that. The Hulk is kind of chilled out, letting the human side have a turn driving. Basically, Cap is looking the same. He just looks like he's going to play Elphaba in Wicked because he's green all over. Now, this costume has lost the arms because Cap has gotten quite a bit stronger and needs room for all the muscles. Similar to Banner's Hulk, Major Gamma can Hulk out and causes quite a bit of damage when he does. These two combination variants happen in the 616 universe, so that means they were quickly undone. The magical cards ended up in the hands of some kids who were more than happy to trade the tarot cards for a cool game on a tablet and put everything back the way it was. But number 1, Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy was briefly Patriot Princess. The backup story in Gwen Stacy 1 is about Gwen's turn as America's sweetheart. If we're being honest, the story features Gwen taking up pretty much every hero's mantle: the Ingwenable Hulk, Hawk Gwen, Gwen Goddess of Thunder, Iron Gwen. Together, they are the Avengers, but Captain Gwen America was a particular standout. The Avengers are actually all in a band together, with Gwen America on the rhythm guitar, so there's really nothing she can't do. Gwen has the blonde hair, blue-eyed Steve Rogers look-alike thing going on, plus she always stands up for the little guy, making her a great choice, though fleeting. But hey, if they ever did need someone new in the future, she would be an excellent Captain America.
Number 10, 3099. Although this version of Captain America is not native to any comic books, being from the Marvel Future Fight game, he is still probably one of the sweetest looking Captain Americas we have ever seen, and he is from the future, so a win-win. This Cap is James Rogers, presumably an ancestor of Steve Rogers, and he wields a shield that seems to be made of pure energy that can do multiple different things. By watching some of his moves from the game, James can do all the normal Captain America things, but his shield can create a force field bubble around James. It is also able to duplicate itself and become multiple shields at once to attack multiple enemies and give James protection while other shields are bouncing around doing crazy stuff. The story reason for his existence is that in a fight between an Ultron under the control of Red Skull and modern day Captain America, Iron Man, and Black Widow, a portal to an alternate future dimension opens up, and the alternate 39 future versions of those three heroes come through and they fight against their originals. I don't really care what the excuse is for having them. All the versions of these $30.99 heroes are totally awesome, even if only in their designs. Number 9, Sharon Rogers. Oh look, it's another Marvel Future Fight version of Cap. I'm sorry, I promise this is the last one, I promise. In an alternate universe where Captain America was never frozen in ice at the end of World War II, Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter celebrated V-Day with a private marriage ceremony and some alone time. After the couple's honeymoon, when Peggy was assigned to South Korea, the couple welcomed the birth of their daughter Sharon. Following in her heroic parents' footsteps, Sharon soon became an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. herself and eventually took over the role of Captain America. Tony Stark presented her with awesome-looking heavy-duty but lightweight Starlight armor, alongside a new energy-absorbing shield and a new weapon, the Blaster Lance. She looks wild and totally awesome, and I'm assuming, based on her in-game stats, that she's on par with her father ability-wise, but with the obvious technological enhancements. Number 8, Kyoshi Morales. When a group of 5 Captain Americas from different realities are brought together in Captain America Corps number 1 from 2011, we get a look at Kyoshi Morales, the great-grandnephew of Luke Cage, and he is the 25th century's Commander A. Kyoshi is a much more physically imposing character, standing at what looks like almost 7 feet tall, and he was definitely the most physically imposing Captain America among the Captain Americas gathered by Toph Key. Instead of a vibranium shield, Kyoshi's suit can generate energy shields on each arm, which resemble the normal Captain America vibranium shield, kind of like Captain America 3099 from number 10. His suit is much more advanced as well, as you'd expect from the 25th century Captain America. For example, it features a neuro web, which allows him to tap into wireless systems and stored information. He had all the enhancements we'd expect from a Captain America, and he is just a super cool character who I really hope we get to see more of in the future. But for now, he is definitely my favorite of the Captain America Corps members. Number 7, Shannon Carter. Spider-Girl, May Parker's timeline, otherwise known as Earth 982, presented a brighter future for Marvel than the world of 2099 suggested. In the MC2, Sharon Carter's cousin, Shannon Carter, idolized Captain America as she grew up. Now, as an adult, Shannon worked as a tour guide for the Avengers mansion, but eventually she pushed herself to her physical limit, created miniature Captain America shield weapons, and she was invited to join the next generation of Avengers. Shannon took on the American Dream persona in tribute to Cap, but when she finally met and saved her idol, Steve was so impressed that he gave Shannon an indestructible shield too. So while she did have a different name, she was ultimately another version of Captain America, and an alternate future version too. She also kicked butt, so there's that. Number 6, Danielle Cage. On Earth 15061, Danielle Cage, the daughter of both Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, would eventually grow up to become the Captain America of her time. And let's think about this. The subsonic flight and superhuman longevity of her mother, with the bulletproof skin of her father, plus the superhuman strength, durability, stamina, speed, and healing factors of both of them? Yes, Danielle Cage doesn't just use the shield of Captain America, she is the shield, and she is an awesome Captain America. She arguably does not even need her shield, which is a controllable drone replica of the original. Unfortunately, we don't really get to see much of this version of Danielle Cage, but we know Danielle is a force to be reckoned with, and as such, she is a Captain America who deserves to be on this list. Number 5, Mutant X. The Captain America of Earth 1298, first appearing in Mutant X number 15 in 1999, was a mutant with no name who took on the role after Steve Rogers was brought to an end by a Sentinel attack. His past was unknown except for the fact that he was experimented on by the government due to having latent mutanacy. This captain wasn't exactly stable. He lacked control over his mutant powers, which resulted in him accidentally ending the lives of both the 6 and most, if not all, of the Avengers. What were his powers though? This Cap was still given the Super Soldier Serum, which I'm assuming gave him all of the same powers as Steve Rogers, but his mutant abilities included the ability to increase his mass and strength, telepathy, force field generation, crazy energy-based powers, and near invulnerability. His abilities activating caused enough of a galactical upset that it woke the Beyonder, who was sleeping inside the planet's core. So yeah, he went rampaging and was a total psychological mess, but that doesn't change the fact that he was absolutely very powerful. Number 4, 2099 Captain America. First appearing in 2099 Manifest Destiny, this Captain America was frozen again after a war happened that ended the heroic age in his timeline. He was brought to Alchemax, and after being thawed out, he told Miguel O'Hara all about it. Now this Captain America was eventually given Thor's hammer Mjolnir to symbolize the beginning of a new world. world. That's right, it's an official Thor cap. Alongside Miguel O'Hara, Captain America assembled the various 29 heroes into a new team of Avengers and led them into a battle in space against the President Doom of 2099. Yes, he does look like a very 90s amalgamation of the two characters, but his power was nothing to scoff at. Neither was the inspiration he fired up in people's hearts. Definitely a fantastically powerful alternate future version of Captain America. Number 3, another 2099 cap. But wait, there's more! In Marvel 2099, Captain America was a female named Roberta Mendez, or this version of Captain America was. Roberta was a bit different from most other captains on this list. Instead of joining a government-sponsored research program, Roberta was forcefully given the super soldier serum by her husband, Harry. She gained all the powers afforded to a super soldier, and she did indeed become a new Captain America, although she was under the control of the Alchemax Corporation, which is a massive science-based company in this future world. It kinda gets worse for Roberta, as she is actually completely unaware of her separate Captain America persona thanks to brainwashing. Luckily, she did actually eventually rebel against Alchemax and then legitimately became Captain America, taking on the ideals that made her predecessor, or predecessors, I guess, so much better. Number 2, Earth X. Captain America, in the not too distant alternate future of Earth X, was a bit more tragic. In this world, everyone was exposed to Terrigen mists, giving everyone powers and sort of denying the need for superheroes as much. On top of that, this Cap felt unworthy, as he had actually separated the Red Skull from his head using his shield in an act of vengeance, causing him to step down from the Avengers out of shame. There's reason to believe this likely led to all the Avengers except Vision being defeated by Absorbing Man, so this Cap was a faded version of what he could have been, but he still had all the same powers and abilities and still fought against what was wrong and stood for what was right. He helped defeat an evil telepathic kid called the Skull and helped Mar-Vell create a paradise for deceased heroes. Although he did pass away, this Cap turned into one of Mar-Vell's avenging hosts, which were basically angels in the realm of the dead. He became an avenging angel, which is like a title I kind of hope to possess one day, but I probably won't. But his wings enabled him to fly. He could change his shape, but usually just look like his usual self. He was able to travel between the dimensions of the land of the dead to paradise, and from paradise to the antimatter sun of the negative zone. On top of that, Cap could also awaken the latent memories of those in the realm of the dead with a single touch. He also wielded this extremely cool sword, but we don't really know what its capabilities are. So, he is a much different Captain America with an extremely unique set of powers and abilities, but he's also one of the coolest. Number 1, James Newman. In 2007's Marvel Knights Captain America: The Chosen, Steve Rogers' super soldier serum wore out after all the powerful and intense wars and battles he had been involved in over his unnaturally long life. He returned to his true self and became immortal again, growing old. Now, Rogers volunteered to use an experimental machine that would let him project his image remotely onto battlefields around the world as an inspirational figure to give soldiers hope and courage. And it did just that for the central hero of this comic, James Newman. He was inspired to do incredibly heroic and courageous stuff, even if he felt like he was kind of losing himself. After Steve Rogers' actual death, Steve's spirit possessed James during an incredibly intense firefight and fought in battles for as long as his country needed him, saying that his spirit was inside anyone who needed him. This one's a bit more idealistic, but it does perfectly represent Captain America and his ideals.
Number 10, Jonathan Walker. US agent might be a hero now in the comics, but when he started out in the 616 continuity, he was manipulated into becoming a villain. Jonathan Walker was initially known as antagonistic hero Super Patriot, who did his best to discredit Captain America, claiming that he himself stood for the United States' true ideals. As a result of Red Skull's meddling and manipulation, he was appointed to replace Steve Rogers as the new Captain America after Rogers stepped down as the government actually owned the title and refused to let him keep the title if he wasn't going to be working for them. As Captain America, Walker took a very extreme and violent approach that put him into direct conflict with Rogers, who was currently going by the mantle of the Captain. In the end, the Captain defeated Walker, and after Skull's involvement in the ordeal was revealed, the two ended up teaming up to take him down, starting off on Walker's path to redemption as hero US agent. Number 9, Cap Wolf. Werewolf Captain America isn't as much an alternate version of Cap as it is a distinct moment in Cap's history where he happened to be transformed into a werewolf. Captain America ends up becoming a werewolf while on the trail of Colonel John Jameson, who had gone missing. Captain America himself had reason to suspect that something awful had happened to Jameson, who it seemed may be plagued by his wolf side once more. Jameson was known in the past for operating as Man-Wolf. It seemed as though a wolf-like creature or werewolf was responsible for a series of murders. In the end, however, Cap's trail ended up leading him into a much more complex and disturbing plot where a villain was attempting to use a recreated Werewolf by Night wolf serum to turn people into werewolves. Captain America became one of their victims and for a time became a werewolf himself. Granted, he was still a hero at this point, but werewolves in general are considered to be somewhat uncontrollable monsters who are at least occasionally ruled by their own bloodlust. So I think we can at least partially count Cap Wolf. Also, I needed to complete the monster trifecta. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Captain America lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. MCU US Agents. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, US Agent John Walker accidentally becomes an evil version of Captain America without really intending to do that. Really, it's more complicated than him just being straight up evil, as it is with most Marvel Cinematic Universe antagonists. Walker really wants to do right by the Captain America mantle and do it justice. He's a soldier who has worked super hard to earn this title, but also, although his heart might be in the right place, that doesn't mean that he knows the best way to approach replacing Cap or doing right by his legacy. Walker ends up becoming misguided as a result of dealing with so much disrespect from those around him, and as a result of him not being, as powerful as Cap would be because he doesn't have the super soldier serum. He realizes that being chosen and respected as the new Captain America by the government doesn't necessarily mean that the people of the United States will also respect you, nor that Steve's actual allies and friends will respect you as his replacement either. After he loses his own best friend, Lamar Hoskins, he becomes completely fed up with trying to figure out how to do what's right and instead decides to do what he feels needs to be done. This makes him much more violent and much more dangerous, turning him into an enemy of Falcon and Winter Soldier and leading the government to later on remove his title, his honors, and basically just overall dismiss him. Fortunately, the US agent still found a place on what will likely be either the MCU Thunderbolts or Dark Avengers team. TBD, or at least to be declared, if not to be determined. Number 7. Mutant Captain America. This version of Captain America was a mutant who ended up replacing the original Captain America after he died in a Sentinel attack. He wasn't just given the mantle of Cap either, but also ended up receiving the super soldier serum. He had this and his own mutant powers besides, which made him pretty crazy powerful. Although the mutant version of Cap had good intentions, his powers were somewhat uncontrollable, which was a big problem. His powers going haywire was what ended up causing the death of his own group, the Six, and the Avengers, who he was at the time fighting against. This caused him to lose his sanity, turning him into a full-on villain and a loose cannon, who attacked and defeated pretty much everyone who came after him, except Havoc, who managed to successfully kill and defeat the crazed mutant version of Captain America. Poor mutant Captain America, it sounds like it was a rough go, you know? Number 6. Zombie Colonel America. What's worse than a werewolf Cap? A zombie Cap, obviously. This is the version of Captain America that we get in the Marvel Zombieverse. Although really, this isn't Captain America as a zombie, it's Colonel America, because that is Steve Rogers' hero mantle in this reality. Here, Colonel America was infected and turned into a zombie during that first confrontation with a zombified Sentry, which the Avengers responded to in downtown New York. Zombie Cap was responsible for turning Spider-Man into a zombie, biting him after he himself was infected. He was one of the zombies to fight against the villains for who should get the remains of Galactus' corpse, and of course with it the power Cosmic, which would enable them to travel to other worlds, which they then could devour. However, Zombie Cap was defeated by his nemesis, a zombified Red Skull. So, no power Cosmic for him. He dead. He's double dead. Really. Number 5. William Burnside. William Burnside was the Captain America of the 1950s, who ended up being retconned to not actually be Steve Rogers at all, although he was a man who believed he was Steve Rogers. This version of Captain America was later revealed to be William Burnside initially, a man who was hired to replace Captain America after he went missing in World War II. This version of Captain America was racist and extremely anti-communist, echoing the McCarthy communist witch hunts of those times. Burnside legally changed his name to Steven Rogers and would have an extended lifespan thanks to a version of the super soldier serum that he was exposed to. However, However, because this was not a perfected version of the serum, it apparently would also cause him to become more extreme over time as his psyche and mind degraded as a result, so made him pretty crazy and pretty evil. Number 4. Evil Clone. An evil clone with the mind of Red Skull. To be honest, this has happened multiple times in the comics, where Red Skull has ended up having his consciousness, his personality, or his memories, or some combination of those, into the clone of Steve Rogers. It's happened both in the main continuity and in alternate universes. For this version though, we're going to be talking about issue 350 of Captain America, where the Red Skull in Steven Rogers' clone body ends up being the mastermind behind the whole commission/Walker kerfuffle that we talked about earlier on this list. His plan this time around in a Steve Rogers' clone body is to discard his previous ideologies and use capitalism itself to dismantle the democracy of America and destroy the nation from the inside out. It doesn't work out in the end, and the issue ends with him facing off against both John Walker and the Captain and becoming deformed once more by the red dust of death. But he did try it. He did try. And don't worry, he would come back in more clone bodies. That's how he do. Number 3. Vampire King. This version of Captain America comes from the Exile series, where he becomes King of the Vampires. In the alternate reality of Earth 3931 during World War II by Baron Blood. Baron Blood turns him into a vampire. Vampire Cap is definitely not a good dude. Likely the most evil of all the monstrous Captain Americas listed here, this version of Captain America has his own sinister version of the Avengers and Thralls, who he enlists and forces to fight for him. However, he still proves to be no match for the Exiles, who end up defeating and decapitating him in the end. Number 2. President Red Skull. Not an alternate version of Steve Rogers, but an alternate version of Red Skull who beat Rogers and took to wearing his Captain America suit off and around his new redecorated Oval Office. This alternate version of Red Skull comes from the Old Man Logan universe, where Red Skull ends up appointing himself the new president of the US, which he renames America. America with a K. Red Skull ends up not just defeating Captain America, but also almost all of the superhero community when he manages to rally together an impossible to defeat force of supervillains who coordinate their attack on the nation. Being that he's Red Skull, he's probably one of the most evil versions of Captain America out there because he's Red Skull, although like I said, he's not fully a Cap alt really, but he definitely evil, so. And he does wear that suit a lot. Number 1. Hydra Supreme. This alternate version of Captain America was initially retconned to be the version of Captain America. Steven Rogers ended up being revealed as a Hydra sleeper agent in one of the biggest twists in comic book history. All his heroic actions had apparently just been Steve buying time and building trust so that he'd be in the perfect position to take over the US and could then reveal his true colors. Hail Hydra to this day is one of the most iconic lines ever uttered by the supposed hero. However, it all turned out that this version of Cap wasn't the real Steve Rogers of 616. Instead, what happened was Kobik, the sentient living version of the Cosmic Cube, was convinced by Red Skull that reality should be warped so that Cap could become an agent of Hydra. When this happened, the real heroic version of Captain America ended up trapped within a shard of the Cosmic Cube, and the now altered version of the character took his place in the reality of 616. In the end, the true Cap would be freed from the shard and would end up fighting and defeating his evil Hydra Supreme alternate version. And if you're worried, don't worry, the shard was made bigger, so it wasn't like little tiny Cap running around.
Alright, number 10 is the Captain America of 3099. Although this version of Captain America is not native to any comic books, he is still probably one of the sweetest looking Captain Americas we have ever seen. He is James Rogers, presumably an ancestor of Steve Rogers, and he wields a shield that seems to be made of pure energy that can do multiple different things. It's seen to be able to be thrown, and can even turn into a much larger shield that even creates a force field bubble around James. It seems to also be able to duplicate and become multiple shields, giving James protection while other shields are bouncing around enemies. The story reason for his existence is that in a fight between an Ultron under the control of Red Skull and Captain America, Iron Man, and Black Widow, a portal to an alternate dimension opened up, and the alternate 3099 versions of those heroes came through and fought the main ones. I don't care what the excuse is, to be honest. All the versions of these 3099 heroes are sweet. Alright, number 9, Miles Morales Cap. If you haven't checked out the What If Miles Morales stories, please do yourself the favor. It may not make much sense as to why Miles ends up in the situations he does, but he becomes Wolverine, Hulk, Thor, and, of course, Captain America. In the very first issue, Miles' dad is part of the new super soldier program inspired by the original. Uncle Aaron, who always plays a large part in Miles' life, steals the super soldier serum and keeps it in his fridge, which is where Miles finds it while he's looking for a drink. Turns out Miles is a perfect match for the super soldier serum and he becomes the new Captain America. It's so cool. Because not only is Miles the new Cap, but Tiana Toombs becomes the Falcon, and Sam Wilson becomes the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D., like with the eye patch and everything. Uncle Aaron becomes Prowler after being attacked by Black Widow, and Lonnie Lincoln is the Grey Skull, which is this reality's Red Skull. He seems to be just as powerful as the normal Captain America, if not a little younger and by extension a little more naive. But he's still cool, so. Number 8. Gladiator Cap. Thank the Marvel gods for creating Battleworld. This great amalgamated world gave us tons of different alternate characters and cool little side stories, one of which was Planet Hulk. Captain America and Bucky Barnes fought in a war between the realm of Apocalypse and Greenland, which is a realm inhabited by Hulks, but they were captured and forced to fight in the Colosseum alongside Devil Dinosaur on the outskirts of Doomstadt. At some point, Bucky seemed to be captured by the Red King of Greenland, and the Captain and Devil Dinosaur are sent by God King Doom and his warden Strange to take out the Red King and destabilize Greenland in exchange for also saving Bucky. Now, that's all the premise I really need to see this amazing story and this awesome Captain America variant. He's defeated a group called the Wolverine Clan, he's got long hair, he's battle scarred, he wields a battle axe alongside his tattered patchwork shield, he's a gladiator, and he fights alongside a giant red T-Rex. I mean... Number 7. Rogers. Coming back at you with Marvel 1602 yet again, we have a Captain America who initially came from Earth 460. And on this Earth, Purple Man had become president for life, and Captain America was one of the last heroes resisting him, like we'd expect. Purple Man wasn't able to end this Steve Rogers, so instead, he was sent back to the 1600s. Steve now found himself in Virginia, and he aligned himself with a Native American tribe, assimilating himself into their way of life. Steve taught them what he knew about his present time, his language, and, most importantly, the near annihilation of the Native American peoples. His arrival and discovery at this time caused alternate versions of other heroes to start appearing in this now alternate timeline. But it also caused reality to start breaking just a wee little bit. He went by the name Rogers and kept his origins a secret, being mistaken by the English to be descended from Welsh explorers who reached America before Christopher Columbus. He did not reveal himself until much later, when he would be sent back to his time. I love the 1602 story, and I think what Steve becomes falls right in line with his character. He helped the Native Americans to be aware of what the Europeans would do, and he even saved the colonists of Roanoke and became the protector of Virginia Dare. I promise this story is worth a read, just do it. Number 6. Cap Wolf. In the 616 reality, in Captain America Volume 1, number 405 from 1992, Captain America is injected with a serum by Dr. Nightshade that gives him the curse of the werewolf, giving us Cap Wolf. Now, while he ultimately recovers from the curse, in the reality of Earth 666, everyone is some kind of monster version of themselves, so obviously, this version of Cap Wolf never recovered from the curse and remained a werewolf, becoming a core member of the undead Avengers. It's a super soldier werewolf. I'm not too sure what the rules on his power levels would be exactly, but I know he's gotta be more powerful than a regular Captain America, for sure. Maybe a little bit more feral with less of a tactician's thinking, but he's covered in fur, got crazy sharp claws, and I'm sure his bite is worse than his bark. God, I'm sorry, that was a bad joke. Number 5, it's Venom Cap. With a whole Spider-Verse event, I think it was a genius move for Marvel to create a Venomverse event as well. All the reason I would need is just seeing a whole slew of characters who are Venomized. One of the most prominent would be the leader of the Resistance, a Venom-bonded version of Captain America, who first appeared in the Edge of Venomverse number 1 when he started recruiting alternate versions of Venomized heroes, starting with the Venom X-23. And let me just say, this Captain America looks awesome. All black, obviously, with white accents. His shield can extend out from his body thanks to the Venom tendrils, but then the Resistance gets attacked by a poisoned out Hulk, and then Cap and a whole bunch of Venom heroes become poisons as well. and they look dope as heck. But still, I'll take the black and white Venom versions over the Poison versions any day. Number 4, Bruce Banner. This is a kind of a blink and you miss it moment, which doesn't really make sense for a comic book, but basically in Spider-Man Magazine number 4, we get a little story that shows us a Bruce Banner Hulk who seems to have acquired a Hulk-sized Captain America suit, and he also seems to have Wolverine's adamantium claws, and I'm assuming his adamantium skeleton too. He defends the Daily Bagel against Doc Ock and Magneto. But it seems to be a Hulk who has the wherewithal to become this world's Captain America, but he went through the adamantium bonding process that produced Wolverine? That's utterly insane, and I'm not complaining at all. Just wondering when I'm gonna get to see this again, if ever. Please let it happen. I can only assume he's incredibly powerful, but since we don't get to see much of it, this is where I'm gonna put him. Okay? Okay. Number 3, Mutant X. The Captain America of Earth 1298, first appearing in Mutant X number 15 in 1999, was a mutant with no name who took on the role after Steve Rogers was brought to an end by a Sentinel attack. His past was unknown, except for the fact that he was experimented on by the government due to having latent mutanacy. This captain wasn't exactly stable. He lacked control over his mutant powers, which resulted in him accidentally ending the lives of both the Six and most, if not all, of the Avengers. What were his powers though? This Cap was still given the Super Soldier Serum, which I'm assuming gave him all the same powers as Steve Rogers, but his mutant abilities included the ability to increase his mass and strength, telepathy, force field generation, crazy energy-based powers, and near invulnerability. His abilities activating caused enough of a galactical upset that it woke the Beyonder, who was sleeping inside the planet's core. So yeah, he went rampaging and was a total psychological mess, but that doesn't change the fact that he was absolutely very powerful. Number 2, Major Gamma. The thing I love about comic books, and I've mentioned this already in this video, is that they will come up with just the wildest reasons to give us amazing things we all want. So for example, in the 3rd issue of Tarot, a story from 2020, a set of magical tarot cards representing each of the heroes gets cut in half by Valkyrie and shuffled by the villain Diablo. The cards come back together, and as a result, we get amalgamated heroes. Now 2 of these new heroes are a mix of Captain America and the Incredible Hulk called Major Gamma, and a mix of Captain America and the Silver Surfer named Captain Cosmos. It's kind of hard to pick which of these characters would be more powerful. I'd assume Captain Cosmos, but since you've got a Hulk Cap, which I've definitely always wanted more of, I'm gonna stick with him. Yeah. Yes, I have included 2 very different Hulk Captain Americas, but are you really complaining? Because I'm not. And number 1, we got 2099 Captain America. We've had 3099 Cap already, but he isn't really much compared to this one. First appearing in 2099 Manifest Destiny, this Captain America was frozen again after a war happened that ended the heroic age in his timeline. He was brought to Alchemax, and after being thawed out, he told Miguel O'Hara all about it. But how is he powerful? Well, this Captain America was eventually given Thor's hammer Mjolnir to symbolize the beginning of a new world. That's right, an official Thor cap. Alongside Miguel O'Hara, Captain America assembled the various 2099 heroes into a new team of Avengers and led them into a battle in space. Yes, he looks like a very 90s amalgamation of these 2 characters, but his power was nothing to scoff at. Neither was the inspiration he fired up in people's hearts. Definitely a fantastically powerful version of Captain America. Number 10. Yeoman America. Back in Avengers Volume 3 Number 2 in January of 1998, Morgan Le Fay's reality distortion wave caused the time period to be altered to a medieval setting, which altered the Avengers' clothing, speech patterns, and thought processes. For Steven Rogers, he became Yeoman America, a knight-like soldier with red, blue, and white stars and stripes armor, and weapons including a sword and a more fantasy-like shield. Now, to be clear, this is just regular 616 Captain America, but magically time displaced. So he's got all of his same abilities, but something about wearing a suit of armor and wielding a sword like that makes him just kind of better than himself? In my opinion, I don't know. Number 9. Hydra Cap. While this version of Captain America did appear largely in the 616 reality, he's actually technically from an alternate timeline created by a Hydra brainwashed Cubic, who used her reality warping powers to make Captain America his ideal self. But since she was being influenced by Hydra, his ideal self was a Captain America who grew up being made loyal to Hydra. This Cap would eventually supplant the real Captain America of 616 and would organize the second superhuman civil war, as well as Chitauri invasions on the Earth. He got promoted to director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and influenced the legalization of the S.H.I.E.L.D. Act, which gave S.H.I.E.L.D. way more authority. He used this new power to basically organize a Hydra takeover of America, with Steve becoming the Hydra Supreme and bringing on the Secret Empire event. He was defeated by the proper version of Captain America, brought back by Cubic, but this Steve manipulated his way into an extremely high position of power, banishing mutants, imprisoning Inhumans, creating a Hydra Avengers team, and forcing other heroes into the underground. Number 8. Peggy Carter. If you've seen the Marvel Studios What If show, you know alternate versions of Peggy Carter get the super soldier serum in place of Stephen Rogers. Fans love this idea, even if it's strange for a British agent to become Captain America. There are a few different versions of Captain Carter to choose from, but they all generally share the same abilities. There was a version of the character who appeared in Exiles #3 in 2018 who had a great costume. The one in the Disney Plus show joined the Guardians of the Multiverse, so she was clearly an exceptional version of the character. She's also shown up in a new Marvel Cinematic Universe movie sporting a jetpack, and was able to give the villain of that movie a real good run for their money, while other more powerful characters were felled instantly. She can be a bit more hot-headed than her Steve Rogers counterpart, sure, but she has the power of fan love. And if you know anything about what that power can do, you know that Peggy Carter as Captain America is very powerful. Number 7. MCU Captain America. I find it hard to be able to put most of the MCU iterations of characters into a list of most powerful versions of themselves. The MCU tends to depower a lot of their characters, which I suppose is understandable from a storytelling perspective. But when this version of Cap wields Mjolnir and smacks around Thanos for a little while, nearly beating him all on his own, a feat the Hulk could not even achieve, and then fights the army Thanos brought with him, all with minimal training wielding the power of Thor, it's honestly a sight to behold. I almost wish they showed us Cap going through time, fixing all the branched timelines the Avengers had created. It would have been so cool seeing the ways he could use the hammer. Imagine Captain America flying through the air with his shield in one hand and being dragged by Mjolnir in the other. It would just be really cool. Number 6. Danielle Cage. On Earth 15061, Danielle Cage, the daughter of both Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, would eventually become the Captain America of her time. And, well, let's just think about this for a second. The subsonic flight and superhuman longevity of her mother, with the bulletproof skin of her father, plus the superhuman strength, durability, stamina, speed, and healing factor of both of them? Yes, Danielle Cage doesn't just use the shield of Captain America. She is the shield. She arguably does not even need her shield, which is a controllable drone replica of the original. Unfortunately, we don't get to see much of this version of Danielle Cage, but we know Danielle is a force to be reckoned with, and as such, she is a Captain America who deserves to be on this list. Number 5. Earth X. If you haven't read Earth X, well, do it. But the basic premise is that in this alternate reality, the people of the Earth all begin to gain mutant abilities. And in the words of Syndrome from The Incredibles, and when everyone's super, no one will be. Captain America specifically was a bit more tragic in this story. For starters, he felt unworthy, as he had actually separated the Red Skull from his head using his shield in an act of vengeance, causing him to step down from the Avengers out of shame. But this likely led to all the Avengers except Vision being defeated by Absorbing Man. So this Cap was a faded version of what he could have been, but he still had all the same powers and abilities and still fought against what was wrong and stood for what was right. But it's when he passed on that he actually became more powerful. Cap turned into one of Mar-Vell's avenging hosts, which were basically angels in the realm of the dead. His wings enabled him to fly. He could change his shape, but usually looked like himself. He was able to travel between the dimensions of the land of the dead to paradise, and from paradise to the antimatter sun of the negative zone. On top of that, Cap could also awaken the latent memories of those in the realm of the dead with a single touch. He also wielded an extremely cool sword, but we don't know what its capabilities really are because he never used it. He is a much different Captain America with an extremely unique set of powers and abilities, but he's also one of the coolest. Number 4. Kiyoshi Morales. When a group of 5 Captain Americas from different realities are brought together, we're gonna look at 2 who have not been seen before. But the one I want to talk about here is Kiyoshi Morales, the great grandnephew of Luke Cage, and he is the 25th century's Commander A. Kiyoshi is a much more physically imposing character, standing at what looks like almost 7 feet tall, and he was definitely the biggest among the Captain Americas gathered by Toth Key in Captain America Corps number 1 from 2011. Instead of a vibranium shield, Kiyoshi's suit can generate energy shields on each arm, which resemble the normal Captain America vibranium shield. His suit is much more advanced as well, as you'd expect from the 25th century Captain America stand-in. For example, it features a neuro web, which allows him to tap into the wireless systems and stored information of the world. He had all the enhancements we'd expect, and he is just a super cool character who I really hope we get to see in the future. But for now, he is definitely my favorite of the members of the Captain America Corps. Number 3. Ultimate Universe. In the Ultimate Universe, it seems that Captain America's treatment with the Super Soldier Serum actually seemed to give him a bit more of an edge in terms of his powers. For example, while this universe's Hulk is a bit weaker than the 616 version, he is still incredibly strong. But this Captain America was able to go toe-to-toe for a few rounds against the Hulk, almost actually defeating him and eventually knocking him out, which is like 616 Cap could never do that. Ultimate Cap also seemed pretty capable of handling armies of guys all on his own. He was an extremely capable leader while also being a bit more than a little ruthless compared to his 616 counterpart. Like when he was fighting against the Chitauri Herr Kleiser, his rival. He resorted to traumatizing Bruce Banner to get him to turn into the Hulk and then convincing him that Kleiser was getting it on with Betty Ross so that Hulk would pummel Kleiser into the concrete and then eat him. That kind of wholesome stuff. Nice. Number 2. Soldier Supreme. A cap-wielding Mjolnir? Cool. But how about a Cap with the mystical and magical powers of the Sorcerer Supreme? Well, we get that in Infinity Warps, when Gamora, wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, basically folds reality in half, merging characters with other characters. One of the two merged together, in case you didn't catch on, is Captain America Steve Rogers and the Sorcerer Supreme, Dr. Stephen Strange. The result would be Stephen, with a PH, Rogers, the Soldier Supreme. He fought in World War II against the German Hell Priest Dormammu Red, and would use his super enhancements and military training alongside his mystical and magical abilities. During World War II, he teamed up with his Howling Commandos of Hoggoth, including Dum Dum Fury and Bucky Wong. Later, in the modern era, after returning from banishment in the Negative Zone, he would team up with Iron Hammer, Arachnite, and Weapon Hex to battle against Devondra. Number 1. Super Soldier. Seems like when you take one character and smush them together with another character, you get a pretty OP new character. Like Soldier Supreme, or Cap-wielding Mjolnir, or even Danielle Cage to a degree. But what if you took Captain America and you fused him together with one of the strongest characters in all of comic books? Well, in the Amalgam universe where Marvel characters are mixed in with DC Comics characters, we got Super Soldier. And if you haven't guessed by now, this is Captain America mixed together with Superman. When Clark Kent volunteered for the Super Soldier program, he was injected with a Super Soldier serum containing cellular kryptonite samples from an alien, while also being doused in solar radiation. The result was a power set unheard of for any other Captain America. Super strength over 1 million tons. Invulnerability to everything but Green K, as it's called. Superhuman stamina to the point of being completely tireless. He can fly at speeds of around Mach 10. He has superhuman speed at speeds of about 2,000 miles per second. He can hear and smell anything on Earth. He has a sonic scream that allows Clark to destroy someone's literal essence. No need to eat or sleep. He can heal instantly from most any injury due to his altered metabolism. Clark can create hurricane-level winds by blowing and can also chill his breath to project ice from his mouth. And he has extremely hot heat vision. I think I think, yeah, that pretty much covers it, and I don't really need to say more. But you take all that and put it in the mind of an expert tactician and soldier, it's game over for you, buddy.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Captain America of the Revolutionary War, Steven Rogers. Now, this version of the character is a bit arguable of whether they're canon or not, as they were initially introduced as an ancestor of the regular Marvel Universe's Steve Rogers, but since then have been treated as an alternate universe story. Fighting on the side of the Americans during the American Revolution, this Captain America had no superpowers of his own, but was just an experienced soldier with a shield fighting against an early incarnation of the Hellfire Club. In an oddly tragic twist, however, Steven Rogers wound up dying in one of the last battles of the Revolutionary War when he was randomly struck by a stray cannonball. Not exactly the most heroic end for a Captain America, but hey, they can't all be as epic as Endgame. Coming in at number 9, we have John Walker, specifically the version seen in the Disney Plus show, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Following Sam Wilson's rejection of taking on the role of Captain America and wielding the shield following the retirement of Steve Rogers, the American government attempts to turn combat veteran John Walker into the next generation Captain America. Unfortunately, John has a whole host of undiagnosed mental issues and feelings of inadequacy, and following the death of his partner Battlestar, he violently kills a civilian while being videotaped by the whole world. And although John had seemingly calmed down enough to be on the good guys team for the season finale, it looks like his future in the MCU might just be as a Dark Avenger, something very different than what Steve Rogers originally stood for. Coming in at number 8, we have Roberta Mendez, the Captain America of the year 2099. In a possible alternate future for the Marvel Universe, Roberta was the wife of an operative for Alchemax, a giant corporation with way too much control of future civilization. Roberta was forcefully injected with the super soldier serum by her husband without her knowledge, giving her all of the abilities of Captain America, but also fracturing her mind so that she would have no memory of her own exploits as a superhero. Wielding an energy shield and wings instead of the vibranium weapons of her predecessor, this new Captain America initially fought solely for Alchemax's Avengers team, but soon began to utilize her heroics for the good of everyone and not just for a giant corporation. Coming in at number 7, we have the Captain America from the Age of X event. This Captain America seemed to be mostly the same as the mainstream Marvel Universe's version, but with one clear difference. This guy hated mutants. With the Avengers serving as a team dedicated to wiping out, or at the very least capturing, all members of the X-Men and mutant kind, this version of Steve Rogers only began seeing the error of his ways after killing Mystique and realizing she was protecting a group of innocent mutant children. Horrified at what he'd been a part of, this Captain America would kill his friend Iron Man to stop the mutant slaughter, and was overall just a really weird and twisted take on a hero that usually always fights for the underdog. Coming in at number 6, we have Werewolf Captain America, an incident that actually happened to the real Steve Rogers rather than an alternate dimension counterpart. While investigating the disappearance of astronaut John Jameson alongside a slate of attacks that appeared to have been committed by a werewolf, Captain America was attacked by a mind-controlled Wolverine and knocked unconscious. Cap then found himself injected with a wolf serum by the villain Nightshade and transformed into a much furrier variant of his usual self. Unfortunately for Nightshade, Cap's leadership qualities didn't decrease in wolf form, and he quickly organized a rebellion amongst the other werewolves, overthrowing their master and finally finding a serum that could change them all back into human form. Coming in at number 5, we have the infamous Iron Cap. In the alternate universe of the Bullet Points miniseries, in which various Marvel heroes have had their origin stories all switched around, Steve Rogers is unable to take the super soldier serum, but volunteers for an experimental exoskeleton to join the war effort. Encased in an iron suit that has to be connected to his heart, Steve Rogers becomes both a captain and Iron Man, using his newfound technology-based strength to push back against the forces of Hydra and help the Allied forces win this universe's version of World War II. Coming in at number 4, we have the Captain America from Earth 9997. In this dark alternate universe, the doctor that gave Steve Rogers the super soldier serum was actually a Hydra agent working for the Red Skull undercover, and Steve Rogers was actually chosen because of his blonde hair and blue eyes being an ideal manifestation of the Aryan race. While this Cap had a long career fighting against the forces that wound up creating him, the weirdest twist came after this Steve Rogers died in battle, falling to multiple bullets. This version of Captain America was revived by the being Mar-Vell and turned into a member of the Avenging Host, a league of angels that sought to help the people of Earth cross over to the other side following their deaths. I know Steve Rogers has always been a good man, but becoming a literal angel? Definitely a bit of weirdness going on there, Marvel. Coming in at number 3, we have Captain Colonies. Throughout the Marvel multiverse, each universe has their own member of the Captain Britain Corps, a multiversal group that bands together to take on threats that one universe alone couldn't handle. While this character was mainly just used as a one-off joke appearance, the implication of Captain Colonies is that in this world, the American Revolution never happened, and thus Steve Rogers' transformation into Captain America instead kept him being allied with the British colonies. The flag on his costume may have changed, but hopefully Steve Rogers keeps all of his usual heroics. Coming in at number 2, we have the Ape Captain America from Earth 8101. That's right, you can't have a weird alternate versions list without at least a couple animal entries, and on this alternate Earth, everyone is a primate-based version of their original forms. While Steve Rogers in this reality was merely a very intelligent gorilla, he was actually frozen in ice as an act of betrayal by the vampire Baron Blood, who took his place and misled the Avengers into starting an ape civil war. Luckily, the true gorilla Steve Rogers was eventually freed and led the Ape Vengers once more after defeating Baron Blood once and for all. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the ghostly Captain America of Earth 7116. During the war in Afghanistan, a young soldier named James Newman believes his troop is saved by the sudden appearance of Captain America. However, when he asks his squad mates about the incident, they all seem to believe that it was James that accomplished their rescue. In this universe, Captain America is lying comatose under the surveillance of the US government, but is somehow sending out his spirit to American war zones in need and possessing soldiers in order to keep them safe. This is definitely the weirdest power set that Steve Rogers has ever been depicted having, and it's honestly one of the odder interpretations of Captain America's status as a member of the US military. I mean, weird possessing soldier ghosts? You gotta draw the line somewhere, Marvel. Starting off our list with an honorable mention at number 10, we have Captain Carter. Normally, I'd put my girl Peggy higher up on any list, but since she's less weird and more awesome, we've gotta put her here. Captain Carter actually originally debuted in the Marvel Puzzle Quest video game during a celebration for Captain America's 75th anniversary, but was given a fully fleshed out backstory and has been a fan favorite ever since. In a universe where Steve Rogers is assassinated before he can be given the super soldier serum, Peggy Carter is instead the one who becomes an incredibly strong and iconic hero for the Allied forces. The comics would continue her adventures, with her universe's New York City coming under attack with nuclear weapons by the Red Skull, and eventually lead to her joining the superhero team the Exiles after their multiverse-spanning adventures brought them into contact. Next up on our list is the center point for one of the most controversial Marvel storylines of all time, the infamous Hydra Cap. Initially appearing to be the main Marvel Universe's Captain America, this version of Steve Rogers had grown up indoctrinated by Hydra's fascist ideologies and was actually sent to America to kill the creator of the superhuman serum for the Axis powers, but instead wound up deceiving his way into receiving the serum himself. Having wound up in the main Marvel Universe when their Steve Rogers was rejuvenated back to his usual age in a different storyline, this Hydra Cap was able to hide his evil intentions until the pivotal moment that he declared to the world those shocking words, "Hail Hydra." Seeing one of comics' most inspiring icons twisted in such a way was definitely unexpected, and definitely earns a surprising spot on this list. Coming in at number 8, we have the blood-sucking vampire Cap. In a universe where Captain America fought and then lost against the villain Baron Blood, soon the entire Avengers team was overtaken by his vampiric disease. Consumed with a lust for both blood and power, this Steve Rogers began a year-long killing spree that culminated in killing Baron Blood and taking his place as the new Vampire King. This version had all of the benefits of the Super Soldier Serum, in addition to new vampire abilities such as healing so advanced, he was able to survive getting decapitated when facing off against several other Marvel heroes. I guess going for the head isn't as effective as we all thought. At number 7, we have Ultimate Captain America, a character that probably wasn't intended to be read as weird when first created, but has since turned out to be a bit more of a unique interpretation of the character. Notably more destructive, assertive, and just a bit grumpier than most other interpretations of Steve Rogers, he could be seen as a different interpretation of American patriotism than more classical versions of the character take from. In another wild and tragic twist, this Cap's version of Red Skull is actually his literal son, the result of his last night with his World War II era girlfriend, Gail Richards. Completely unknown about by Steve and born after he was frozen in ice, the baby was taken by the military and grew up in foster care. Growing up with an inferiority complex, this child would eventually scar himself and become the criminal mastermind, the Red Skull. Talk about a messed up family, Steve. Coming in at number 6, it's Steve Rogers. No wait, it's Stephen Strange. No wait again, it's actually Steven Rogers, Soldier Supreme. In a pocket dimension known as Warp World, where every soul of the Marvel Universe has been merged with that of another, Doctor Strange and Captain America were DNA digivolved into the combined form of the Soldier Supreme. In this unique part of the multiverse, the superhuman experiments done by the Allies during World War II were achieved through magic instead of science, with the weak and scrawny Steven Rogers being taught the ways of dark magic and learning powerful sorcery. With a best friend known as Bucky Wong, a literal Winter Soldier after he becomes a ghost, this combo of characters is definitely a standout in a multiverse full of standouts. At number 5, we've got the alternate future showstopper of Danielle Cage, the Captain America of the future. The grown-up child of both Jessica Jones and Luke Cage on Earth 15061, Danielle has taken up the mantle of Captain America in a Manhattan where climate change makes flooding incredibly frequent and gangs roam the streets. With her own arch nemesis in the form of the Golden Skull, Danielle Cage is also one of the physically strongest Captain Americas throughout the multiverse, inheriting both the strength-based power sets of her parents and letting her yeet that red and blue shield as hard as it's ever been thrown before. Coming in at number 4, we've got a bit of a change of rank with Colonel America, aka Zombie Cap. In a world where an infected sentry brings a zombie plague from beyond the stars, and also where Steve Rogers has achieved the rank of Colonel and the presidency of the United States, America's hero is bidden along with many of the Avengers when they try to contain the sentry situation. The Colonel is even the one to eventually bite Spider-Man on the shoulder when the younger hero tries to help. This zombified version of Steve Rogers retains all of his powers and more, surviving with half of his brain exposed until he was finally defeated by his enemy the Red Skull during a final battle over who gets to devour the corpse of Galactus. Definitely some very, very weird stuff. At number 3, we've got another character with a Dragon Ball Z style fusion in the form of Clark Kent, the Super Soldier. And no, this didn't suddenly switch over to a DC Comics themed video. In the Amalgam universe, where the Marvel and DC multiverses have been compressed and combined into one unified world by the megaversal beings known as the Brothers, Super Soldier is the result of mixing the backstories of both Captain America and Superman. Clark Kent is a young man from Kansas who winds up receiving his powers of strength, heat vision, and flight not from being a Kryptonian, but by volunteering for the Super Soldier program to help America during the Second World War, a process which is spied on by a very mischievous Jimmy Olsen. He would go on to fight the leader of Hydra, a version of Lex Luthor, and Super Metallo, a combination of Metallo and Red Skull's usual brand of killer robots. Double the trouble, double the fun. Coming in at number 2, we've got a version of Captain America that doesn't even need America. That's right, it's Captain Avalon. Coming from a Marvel universe inspired by classic sword and sorcery fantasy, this version of Cap is merely called Stevan until his son, funnily enough named Stevan Jr., is kidnapped by the Dreadlord, an evil alternate version of Baron Zemo. While he doesn't appear to have any actual magical abilities or equivalents to the super soldier formula, Captain Avalon is a brave knight at the peak of human condition, and his red and blue shield still brings the core of this classic character to light, even if America doesn't really exist in this Game of Thrones style world. And finally, coming in at the top spot for our weirdest alternate versions of Captain America, we have a choice that's not even human. That's right, it's Captain Americat. Hailing from Earth 8311, the very same world that's home to the spectacular Spider-Ham, this version of Cap is named Stephen Mouser, leads a group of superpowered animals known as the Scavengers, and in another groan-inducing animal pun, most notably led them into battle against the supervillain Moltron. While his appearances have mostly been related to side stories compared to Spider-Ham's main adventures, Captain Americat is definitely the oddest version of Steve Rogers that we've yet to see in the Marvel multiverse. Then again, maybe I'm just biased for the top spot because I'm a cat person.